You must learn.
They say they're foreigners from a whole nother land. Let me explain that. If we go to the Nile Valley culture, the Nile Valley culture is over this area, especially in Egypt and the Sudan. This is considered the Nile Valley culture. What they teach about the Nile Valley culture is there was an Asian population, and this Asian population came over from in these regions, and they came over and dwelt into what we know or what we are calling Egypt today. I say that, because I'm sure a lot of people, for those who are on that level, know we never call it Egypt, but for the sake of understanding here today, in the Nile Valley culture, there was an Asian population that came into this particular region and dwelt there for a long period of time. They were foreigners, right? They came in that particular region. Now, what the scholars have done and what they're continuing to do is say that this Asian population who found themselves into what we know as Lower Egypt, they are responsible for the culture, the history, the language, and they are the ones that influenced the whole Nile Valley culture. And this is what we're fighting against, because we know better than to say this Asian population had influenced anything in the Nile Valley culture. If anything, this Asian population did not have a history, they did not have a language, they were nomadic. They roamed from place to place. So they weren't indigenous, but this is how they try to twist the story. They're trying to say that this population came in, a foreign population, and influenced how this area would grow and to develop a high culture. Why am I saying that? Because this is the same thing that takes place when we talk about Carthage. There was another population that was supposedly came from in here, in this area, and came over, and they were responsible for how Carthage was formed. What I'm telling you is that why is it when we talk about our greatness, it has to come from outsiders or foreigners, like the Africans were not capable of developing a high culture themselves. And this is the pattern in which we find. So what I'm telling you is, and there's a great book, it's called Egypt, the Child of Africa. It's by Ivan Van Sertima. I suggest you go out and get that. It's a really good book because he's one of our elders that fought against them trying to say that there were foreigners who came in and spread the culture. Like we couldn't develop it on our own. We can develop this. We develop this culture on our own as Africans and as children of Africa. When you go down to Monomotapa, this was considered Monomotapa, and in South Africa, and there are great ruins in Zimbabwe. These great ruins, first of all, they don't know what these ruins were used for. You see, we're not ready to tell them. The same way they don't know how the pyramids were built. And we're not just going to tell them, we'll let them, dabble in their little misinformation, and then eventually I guess we'll come and tell them. But they're great ruins in Zimbabwe. And when they talk about these great ruins for a long time, you know what they were saying? Oh, the Europeans, when they first laid eyes on this, they said, this is incredible. Oh my God. They couldn't, and they said, who built these great structures? Like they went to Egypt. Who built these great structures? And of course, they said that there was a population of Europeans who came way in the antiquity, and they came and they built it because the Africans are not capable of building. This is how they think of us. This is the European mind, saying we cannot give you credit for these things. But eventually it came out that the Rosway people were responsible for the building of the great empires down here in South Africa, and were responsible for did anybody ever see those great ruins of Zimbabwe? I mean, I'm talking about, this matches what's in the Nile Valley culture, really. You understand what I'm saying? So, the point I'm making is, whenever let's go here for instance, let's go over to Mali. And if we talk about in West Africa over here, then of course it's an Asian population who came over to this particular area and started doing trade with the indigenous Africans and spread their religion by the sword. I'm talking about the religion they call Islam. It was not native to this area, it was something they brought to that area. It was foreigners who brought Islam to that area. Why did they do it? It was a way to trade with the people and take control of the trade, and they destroyed the original culture that was there. What I'm telling you, and when you go and study about Timbuktu, Songhai, and Mali, these great empires, of course, who takes the credit for them? No indigenous African takes the credit for them. It's always an Asian population, and this is why they became Muslim in that area. What I'm telling you is, when you build great empires and great cultures and high culture, you'll never get the credit for it. And that's why we came here to preserve our culture and to teach our culture once again. No one's taking the time to do it. You understand what I'm saying? Well, there are a lot of people taking the time to do it, but it's not like it's being promoted properly. You understand what I'm saying? Definitely grab a book by Cheikh Anta Diop called Pre-Colonial Africa. It is a great book, and Cheikh Anta Diop is one of the greatest minds that we've ever produced. He's from Senegal. And he proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Nile culture was an indigenous Nile culture. Yeah, touch him, bro. Cheikh Anta Diop. I can't get the spelling right now. So, Cheikh Anta Diop. I can't get the spelling right now, but I'll be sure to get it to you.
His name is D-I-O-P.
D-I-O-P. So, in continuing on, let's go back to Carthage, because what I was trying to explain to you is there's a pattern. There's a pattern that I'm showing you of when you build great empires, or when we build great empires, it always has to come from a foreign population. We know that, right? Y'all with me? Y'all with me?
Yes.
It's always a foreign population, because that's going to get into, when I start talking about Carthage in detail, it comes from a foreign population who came over into this area. This is what they teach. This is in the documents, that there were populations from beyond the sea who came over, and this is how Carthage became great. But they never take the time to give the indigenous Africans credit for what they did, and what they are the ones who originated this empire, but they get no credit. It's always the Phoenicians. You always hear this term. The Phoenicians are the ones who originated Carthage, and that's why I'm here today, because I'm going to show you how the Phoenicians did have an influence. They did, and I'm not saying, because as Africans, we're very loving people. We welcome people in. We want to trade with people. You understand what I'm saying? But of course, after that happens, then of course they say, well, we're going to trade with you, we're going to take your land, and then we're going to destroy your history. That's what they do. So when we're talking about the historical research of what we know as this great empire called Carthage, it's problematic. It's problematic. The historical research is problematic. Why? It's because there was a series of wars that were fought, and these wars are called the Punic Wars, P-U-N-I-C, the Punic Wars. Now, after the Third Punic War, Rome, right up here, Rome was successful at destroying the history and the culture totally of Carthage. Let me repeat that. They were responsible for destroying the history and the culture of Carthage. Why am I saying it? Because we've been living under the illusion and under the myth that when we talk about, let's say, African history, for instance, they didn't write. This is what they're teaching us. They say they didn't write anything. They didn't have writings. They didn't write things down. But the Europeans were, fabulous writers. But we didn't. What I'm telling you is, yes, we did write. We did write. There was tons of documents which were destroyed. And in the Third Punic War, they were successful at coming into this area. And what did they do? They went from house to house. And they murdered the men. They murdered the women. They murdered the children. You see what I'm saying? And what they did really is they searched down and they wanted to find the documents. They wanted to destroy the documents. And that's why it's important when you learn.
You must learn.
Just like I told you.
You must learn. You